Commissioner Trudeau,
Here.
Commissioner Dolan,
Here.
Rick Scott substituting as an alternate for Commissioner Hine.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioners, Rick Riegstag is on the phone with us, I believe. Lucas, are you there?
Yes, here.
Thank you. Sergeant Bill Clock. Commissioner Cooper.
Here.
Commissioner Lazarus.
Here.
Commissioner Liu.
Here.
And we have a quorum,
We do, okay.
just barely.
That's why it's important to let us know if you're going to be absent. So welcome, everyone, to the fourth meeting, is it,
Fifth meeting.
of the Transportation Commission. We have a packed agenda, so I'd like to move right through everything. So I'd like a motion to approve the agenda. Scott, and I bet Chip will second it. All right,
Motion made by Commissioner Trudeau, seconded by Councilmember Smith.
yes. Are there any changes or comments on the agenda? Kayla has one about, do you want to say that now about the,
But the staff report?
yes,
For the staff report, which has Crescent's name, we'll still, it's an item listed on the agenda. We'll just acknowledge, we can acknowledge it now, I guess, that you've been provided that in your packet. We won't go into detail just in the interest of time with this meeting tonight. We have a very full agenda, so if there are questions, those can be submitted to me for additional follow-up with the appropriate staff person, but you've received the staff report, was posted on Legistar and is available to you that way. We won't do a presentation of it as we have previously.
we'll miss you, but that's okay. So we're going to move right into public comment, and any person who'd like to speak has 3 minutes, and Kayla's going to monitor that time and let you know. So, okay. Please identify yourself and sign in.
Hi, I'm Peter Houck from the Washtenaw Bicycling and Walking Coalition. So firstly, it's good to be at my first meeting of this group, and thanks for the work you're doing. I wanted to talk tonight about the education campaign that we've launched here in the city, and I've got 2 points that I'd like to make about it. First, I am glad that we're finally getting this underway. It was one of the recommendations that came out of the task force, so I think this is a good thing to work on. However, there's a couple of things that are missing, and namely our new 5-foot passing law. I'd like to see that in there, and our crosswalk law also, which is unique to Ann Arbor. And these are unique to our community, and they demonstrate how we value non-motorized transportation, I think. So they are also, I think, misunderstood or not. They are not followed as well as they should be, so I think they can use some education there. So let's please add those in. The other thing that I'd like to change about the campaign is that we need to work on the tone a little bit. The recommendation from the task force was that we have a positive message, and come on, you're smarter than that, I guess, is saying that people are smart, but it's not really a positive message. Instead, I'd like a message that says, we are a community that values non-motorized transportation, and when we do it safely, and you should join us. And when you choose to drive, you should be taking that into account as well, and you should be paying attention to all roadway users. And that's what we do here. This is why our community is special, so come along with us. That's the kind of positive message that I would like to see from this campaign that I think would be more effective than focusing on, on the dangerous parts of it and the sort of the negative aspects. So that's about the education campaign. The other thing I'd like to say is, for those of you who haven't already been down Scioto Church since we put in the detour there. Go have a look. That's the future that could have been if we hadn't paid attention to things like road diets and non-motorized transportation. So I'm glad it's temporary, but it's a reminder of how things could have been around here. So, thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? All right, well, thank you for being here. We're looking at the minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, Robert?
Second.
Great. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? All fine? Okay. Then by voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, then we have minutes. So, the next part is old business, and
I don't believe we have any for this meeting tonight.
okay.
I think we move in now to information and discussion,
Okay,
and we can we can begin with Sarah Pressbridge-Grunewich from The Ride with her presentation, and we'll move through a series of presentations providing a transit overview. It will also include Steve Dolan from University of Michigan and Sean Reed from Clean Energy Coalition. And there's some time for question and answer that's allocated after those three presenters. So if you could try to hold questions until that time, that would be appreciated.
sorry to give you so little time, but we have to do that.
All right, you guys are going to get the speed tour through transit, so
Great.
hold on to your hats. And my name is Sarah. I'll answer questions after the other presentations. So the RIDE is a independent nonprofit unit of government. We were formed in the 1960s. Our board is made up of Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti Township. Ypsilanti Township had been kind of contracted for service for many years, but formally joined our authority in 2013. We also have contracts with Pittsfield, Scioto, Superior, et cetera. We are funded by fairs, local millages, state and local funds, and have a number of partnerships. We have about a $40 million budget. You know us best from our fixed route buses. We have 35 routes. This is about 90% of what we do. And in Ann Arbor, the coverage is about 91% of households are within a quarter mile of a bus route. It can be hard to get to the back of cul-de-sacs, et cetera. So, to talk about operations, there's a lot. I could spend all day on this. It's a fascinating business. But one of the main things we try to do is match our resources and demand. Where do people live? Where are major job centers, healthcare, education, et cetera. So we're always looking at maximizing our resources and maximizing connectivity. It means that, for instance, on Route 4, our busiest route, which has a lot of origins and destinations, has very frequent service. It's every 5 to 10 minutes in the peak period. Whereas in a much more low-density neighborhood, it's more like every half hour. We do experience peaking in the morning and in the evening. So when everybody goes to work and comes home, that's when most of our people ride, and most of our and we have a little more service during those times. We get a lot of questions about bus shelters and amenities. Kind of our basic rule of thumb for a shelter is when we have 50 riders or more a day, kind of merits a shelter. It costs not just money to put the shelter in, but it's really important for us to maintain it so it's safe and also is a good kind of welcoming place for community members and our riders. We're a lot more effective when we have community partners who can help us out with those shelters. We've got an adopt-a-stop program, so if you know of any stop that needs a little help, we would love to have your help. The city is a great partner, but we do take a lot of care in where we place those bus stops, particularly near lighting, crosswalks, wherever we can. We are somewhat limited by the road network and the conditions that are out there. Not everything is perfect, as you know. And then I'd particularly like to give a shout out to our bus drivers and our mechanics. It's a tough job. Mechanics are there in the middle of the night making sure the buses get out every single morning. So thank them if you see them. One of our main kind of missions, we are here for the general public, but we have a special mission for people who are elderly, people who have disabilities, or who cannot drive. We will all hopefully get old someday, so I will go through that a little bit. It's a little bit of our mission statement. We have fairly high rider satisfaction. We're very proud of that. All of our buses are accessible to wheelchairs and other things. We have an environmental focus, and we work every day on being reliable and safe. So, we have a lot of other services, that other 10% of what we do. The biggest one is ADA Paratransit Service within 3/4 of a mile of a fixed route that's federally mandated. We go much beyond the federal mandate, but that's a really key thing to connect people who can't use the fixed route for particular reasons. We also, Gold Ride, seniors can ride our buses for free, so come by our office and get your card. But that helps us shift people to the fixed route, which is already running. It's a sunk cost for us as opposed to special trips. We also offer night ride and holiday ride, so when we are out of service, there are kind of shared taxi options. And then we have some mobility management for people who live outside of the area. A huge part of what we do, Kelly is here from Get Downtown, is a partnership with the DDA and downtown employers for a bus pass. And then the M-Ride agreement with U of M. U of M basically pays fares for student and staff. Between the two of them, it's about 50% of our ridership. So by leveraging those partnerships, we help more people get on the bus, less parking structures, a lot more sustainability, et cetera. We have a number of other partnerships with the school districts, EMU, et cetera. We also have some outside of the area service, commuter express service during peak periods, air ride service to the airport, van ride. So if you've got folks coming in from Toledo or Flint, et cetera, we provide options to get here. And then we also have park and rides kind of on the outskirts of town. A big deal was we had a millage on the ballot in May 2014. It allowed us to increase service by 40%. This is largely not always at the most productive periods, but it's really important to increase the utility of the service to the community, particularly on weekends, later night service. But there are a number of more direct routes, making it faster and more convenient to get places. Our ridership is a little over 6.5 million people annually. That is up. The transit industry experiences ups and downs. We had a small down. The transit industry is down in general, but we are back up and are excited about that. But as you can see, our biggest gains are on the weekend, where we increase service, and we're really excited to see people use that. And then our paratransit A-Ride service is up significantly. It does put pressure on our budget. We're so pleased to do it, but it's one of those, I think we're doing a good job. Our new applications are up 40%, but we'll be kind of watching that. We also have a lot of new technology on our buses, and I saw Steve's presentation has even more. But on our website and then through many apps we share data with, you can now track your bus in real time. You can get a bus schedule by each individual stop. You can also, there's a text my bus tool, so if you don't want to use your smart, you can use your dumb phone as well. What's ahead? We are still on the last stage of the service improvements. We'll have a new Ypsilanti Township Express route to downtown Ann Arbor. We're doing some new mobility piloting in southern Ypsilanti Township, which is a low-density area, and so have a service that people can call and get connected to the fixed route. We have a partnership with the Washington Area Value Express on Jackson Road and Wasayo Township, and that we're excited because they're going from every 2 hours to every 1 hour of service, which is a big leap. And then we'll be doing some fine-tuning of service, making sure that it still meets the resources and the demand meet each other, and that we're doing the best that we can. We're going to be renewing our millage next year. And we've got a number of planning projects. A number of them are kind of internal right now after the big expansion, are trying to make sure we get our house in order. But as interesting ones come up, we can bring those forward. We're kind of in the middle of our budgeting and planning cycle right now. And then, as you know, there's a large kind of regional transit conversation, which we are very much a part of, but it kind of affects how effective transit can be. You can get around here locally, but it is really helpful if you can get beyond here as well. So, okay, I think that was less than 10. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Sarah was on the Pedestrian Safety and Access Task Force as well, so she has that perspective. And next,
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner Felt. Transportation Commission, I'm happy to be here, probably happy to be here to talk to you about our university transit service. So where is this present? Gotcha. Thank you. So the mission of the university's transit system is really to support our academic, clinical, research mission at the university. What that means is helping people get to class, helping employees get to work, helping to be able to move between campuses. All those things are important in our transit system. So to give you just an overview of where the transportation service fits in to the overall university's operations, it fits under our facilities and operations group. And you can see a bunch of groups listed here: architecture, engineering, construction. They're the ones that are responsible for all the building. You know, there's a number of other different groups here, but our transit services are part of our logistics, transportation, and parking operations. And as everyone understands, transportation and parking really kind of go hand in hand, and we'll talk a lot more about that. I am responsible at the university for everything that's listed there in the light blue. So before we can even start talking about transit, it's always about parking. And one of the first things that my boss told me when I first came to work at the university, he said, "You'll never believe how emotional parking can be." And absolutely right. But what we try to do is, again, we have clinical research, academic mission. We would rather not use our university land for building parking. So we need to use our transit system as best we can to avoid people having to drive single occupancy vehicles. And we have a significant parking system, but we also try to use our alternative transportation to solve for not building more as we continue to grow. So what I tried to show here is kind of the demographic trends, and you can see, of course, most employees are coming from the Ann Arbor area. Well, if we have really solid transportation solutions, we can hopefully have robust enough transportation that folks do not want to drive their car to work every single day. So that's a big part of our mission. We do pretty well if you think about it. We probably have 4,000 people that park at the periphery of the campus and use the bus systems to get in. That's a significant amount of parking to keep out of the core area of the university. But we have employees, faculty, staff, students that come from all over this region. So a little bit of overview about the fleet itself. Basically made up about 55 buses, large buses. We have 150 operators and staff to manage that operation. A significant portion of those bus operators are student bus drivers. So that helps with a few things. It helps with flexibility with our operations. We run a super frequent service, especially at peak times, and it also is a nice way to help with cost. So we operate 12 fixed routes with over 7.5 million riders annually. So it's a busy operation. Our paratransit operations are significantly busy too, over 11,000 trips, and we manage charters for all the different organizations at U of M. After-hour service is our Safe Ride service. After the bus frequency comes way down, we operate smaller vans with an on-demand type of service, and it's an app for students and faculty staff to be able to use to get around at night if they don't feel safe. And the last is bioresearch shuttle, and what we had found over time is we have a lot of research going on at the university, people getting on with maybe some research items that probably shouldn't be in a mass transit bus, and never knowing exactly what they are, we came up with a solution that for the researchers, so they don't use the bus to move, let's say, between North Campus and Central Campus with a rack of test tubes or whatever it is, a limb in a cooler or whatever it could be, right? So we operate this small shuttle on an on-demand service now, so we can keep those research specimens off the bus. So Sarah talked a lot about, or she mentioned MRIDE. I need to check with you on my data here. I thought we were only 40% of your ridership on the ATA. I think you said 50. You are. Okay. Yes. So, but really, it's a significant service for our faculty, staff, students, again, so we don't have to have them all come and park their vehicles. Express Ride from Canton and Chelsea on the triple ATA buses. Again, it's a solution to provide incentives for faculty and staff, mostly staff, mostly at the hospital on that service. Again, we don't want them coming in. The ride share, or which van pools, carpools, van pools, our biggest success story there. We have nearly 600 people that utilize that. Again, when we think about it from a parking perspective, that's really a parking structure that we don't have to build because of the alternative service. Bike program, I think Sean's going to talk a little bit about the ArborBike. We're very closely aligned with that group to support, again, alternative transportation. Emergency ride home is something we provide for faculty and staff, again, to incent them to use alternative transportation. So if they use the bus, they come in and have an emergency and they have to get home, we provide 6 free trips a year, no matter where they're going. We've had people who've gone to Windsor, to Toledo, further, and we pay for that trip, again, and to incent them to use alternative transportation. Here's a map of our service area. It's pretty straightforward, really operates mainly on the university's campuses, and interfaces in the central part of campus with the AATA at the Central Campus Transit Center. I noted an area that's along Fuller Road at peak times. We have buses running every 2 minutes up and down Fuller Road. That's nearly all day. Sarah mentioned her peak. Her peak for the triple ATA is really related to start and stop times for people working. Our peak is different. It starts with employees coming in to work. That kind of ends when the employees get to work, and then the students start going to class. So our peak starts early in the morning, and it really pretty much goes out throughout the whole day. So we stay busy all day. Very busy on that corridor up and down the Fuller Road area. In addition to our bus service, we operate at the university a fleet of vehicles. There's over 1,000 vehicles in our fleet. You know, everything from maintenance vehicles for the maintenance staff, UMPD, police vehicles, waste management vehicles, so on and so forth. And we have a big mix of hybrid, gas hybrid vehicles, diesel hybrid, and some electrics. So technology, Sarah, this is not all bus technology, so it's a list that looks more impressive than maybe it really is. Fleet-wide GPS, this is something that we've just installed in our fleet of vehicles, and it's really a system that integrates with the onboard diagnostics of the vehicles, so we can watch idle time, driving behavior. We can know where the vehicles are, where they are. It helps us to look at utilization better. The idea is to reduce our fleet. The idle time, I think, is especially appropriate right now. The city just announced its no idle policy. This will really help us stay in compliance, so we can watch our vehicles and we can get reports when they're idling, when they shouldn't be. Double map live tracking is our bus AVL system, the automatic vehicle locator system, very similar to AATA's. AVI announcements on the buses, that's something fairly new for us to get in line with the ADA compliance. So there's an automatic announcements of stops, integration with the head signs, and online scheduling for our paratransit. And then I mentioned our on-demand service at night with our Safe Ride and Bio-Research Shuttle. So I just wanted to make a note about future planning. And we've done a lot, and you may have heard us talk about the connector in the past and what we want to do to continue to solve our transit issues. Again, the university, as everyone knows, is growing from a square footage, from the number of people, from the type of activities going on campus. So it's getting to be a busier and busier place. We need to support that, and we need to advance our transportation solutions. So working very closely with our colleges of engineering, the U of M Transportation Research Institute. Jim's going to talk to us in a little bit about the connected vehicles. We are working very closely with them to continue to look at how we can optimize our transportation solutions so that they're even better and more effective as we move forward. So a couple of the things we talked about is some first and last mile kind of circulators, maybe connecting to a higher capacity system, signal integration, connected vehicles, all those kind of things to help us. And V2X is vehicle to everything. Jim is going to talk a lot more about that. So that's a super quick, high-level overview of our transit system. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you for the invitation to speak this evening. My name is Sean Reed, and I'm the Executive Director of Clean Energy Coalition. Clean Energy Coalition is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are based here in Ann Arbor. We started in 2005. We came out of City of Ann Arbor municipal government. At the time, I was a city employee and had a federal grant to try to take what was then a city program and spin it out. And we created Clean Energy Coalition to house that program, and have also expanded to do much more. The original program was Ann Arbor Clean Cities, and we've since branched out to do a whole lot more. But our organization is focused on reducing CO2 emissions or greenhouse gases. That's really how we measure our success in terms of what we do. And we do that by implementing projects. And we work in both the building and transportation sectors. So it can be everything from past management of the city's PACE program to working on putting charging stations in municipal parking structures. But what I'm here to talk about tonight is the ArborBike program. and how we can use that more effectively here in Ann Arbor. So the map right here shows some of the research that was done as part of the connector study. And what they were doing was looking at, and I wasn't part of this, so you have to excuse me because I'm sure there are people in the room that know much more than myself. But looking at what are the types of destinations that people like to go to. And I like this because I think it makes very visual something that statistics bear out, which is that about 70% of car trips that take place are under 2 miles. So where people are and where they want to go typically is not a very long distance. Under 2 miles, that's about 12 minutes on a bike. So you could look at the fact that potentially if somebody was of a physical condition where riding a bike was an option, about 70% of car trips could potentially be substituted with a bike, which could be done as part of bike share or with their own bike. But what could we really do to make that an easier thing to happen? And bike share is one part of that mix. Other things, feedback we get from people involve, feeling safer when they're out on the bike. And interestingly enough, educating both people in vehicles as well as people on bikes, because a fair number of people are actually afraid of other bikers as well as the vehicles that are out there. This program was launched through a number of partnerships. It's very similar to all the other projects that we do in terms of the fact that they wouldn't happen were we not partnering with other entities. This project was structured very similar to others as well in terms of the fact that there was a very significant grant that was involved. It was CMAQ funding in order to help fund the purchase of a lot of the equipment, the bikes and docking stations. So our partners with getting this started included the city, the ride, and the University of Michigan. And it's definitely true to say that ArborBike would not exist were it not for those partners. Each of them was critical in terms of helping the system get started and continue to be critical to this day. The DDA was involved with some of the earlier conversations, kind of tapered off a bit and is now being brought back. And we have ongoing discussions with Get Downtown to try to look at ways where we could potentially integrate ArborBike more tightly with the Go Pass or other activities. So bike sharing, hopefully you guys might have seen the systems that are, or the stations that are out there. There is one located right next to City Hall, next to the courts building. But all of the stations are renewably powered with a photovoltaic panel. People can get memberships to ride the bikes either at the kiosk where the stations are, or they can do so online. The bikes are all 3-speed Trek bikes. They are very heavy, and I believe that's intentional in order to have a high degree of durability for them, given the usage that they get. So how it works, for those of you who might not have done it, you join where you can either sign up online or at the kiosk. You check the bike out, just pull it out. Once you've activated it, it'll get released. You can ride it and then return it at another station. With our system, you can keep the bike for up to an hour. At that point in time, all you have to do is just make sure it gets checked back in, and you can check it out again if you'd like. But if you go past an hour, you get overage charges. Our system is a little bit different in terms of the fact that we give people an hour as part of a checkout, and most bike share systems across the country, it's about 30 minutes, which is typically enough for most people to get where they want to go. The system performance to date, looking at 2015, 2016. In 2015, we kind of got close to having a full year of operations with all of our stations. Prior to that, we had a short, somewhat soft launch in the fall. So between looking at 2015 and 2016, there was about a 25% increase in trips, getting us close to 18,000 trips over the course of the year. We closed the system down for 3 months because once we start getting into December, trips go down quite a bit, and I believe as part of our license agreement with the city, we have to pull the stations that are sited on city property for snow removal. I believe that was probably the main reason. So it's somewhat counterintuitive. We talk to people, and they think that when the students leave, system usage would go down considerably, but you can see in looking at this that system usage goes up considerably over the course of the summer, because even though U of M students are considerable users of the system, faculty and staff that might be here might remain over the course of the summer, but then also we have an awful lot of other users that are around. And Ann Arbor does get a little sleepy in the summer, but not super sleepy with all the various events and things like that going on. Membership, our first year was starting off at about 4,400. Last year it got up to over 5,000. This is very promising in terms of people really, I think, stepping up and saying that they're interested in using the system. I believe that bike share has a very strong role to play in helping the city, the university, the ride, all major institutions really accomplish many of their planned goals. One, it helps Ann Arbor with truly being a world-class city, which I know is the aspiration, and certainly I think what we see out there. And bike share has become part of what people look for in a world-class city that's out there. Significantly supports climate action. It's essentially a zero-carbon transit system that's operating here. Supports parking management and the various strategies that are there. Contributes to multimodal transportation by diversifying the mix, and provides a cost-effective last-mile solution for people. So I would like to underscore the fact that ArborBike is, in my opinion, just one part of the bigger transit mix. And if you were to look at, and this is from the Shared Use Mobility Center, they have a calculator, and so you can look in there and drill down in Ann Arbor and say, well, if we're looking at decreasing personal vehicles by 10%, and we were looking at some sort of mix in order to accomplish that, what would we need? So, you're looking at increasing the number of your transit commuters, increasing your car share vehicles, shared bikes, and ride share or carpoolers. And, bike share is important because it can serve as a connector or another means of diversification for people. So when we've done our annual survey of our riders, we've found that a significant number of them use bike share as a means of completing a trip that might have started on the bus, or they use bike share going home in order to get to the bus station. But there's a certain leverage that's in there where maybe it helps to contribute to people using those other forms of transportation, or knowing that, so I can ride the bike, have the bike share, I can use Uber when I need to, and I think we're seeing more of that in terms of people being able to get away from having their own personal vehicle. It becomes a better option when they have more options. That's mostly it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I wanted to say one thing, though.
Yes.
So we are having a press event tomorrow at Honey Creek Community School, which is on Wagner Road. And we will have a E-Lion electric bus that'll be there, school bus. It's all electric, and we'll be there talking about the value of electric buses in relation to improving air quality as it relates to school-age children. It's significant. But then also, state of Michigan is getting a significant settlement from the Volkswagen settlement that happened federally, and the state's about $60 million, about half of it is targeted towards school bus replacements or retrofits, and I believe a significant portion of those should be all electric, so you can actually see it in the flash.
Great.
It's tomorrow at 11.
Thank you, Sean. So we have a few minutes left in the agenda for some questions to any of the three presenters on that presented on transit topic. So if commission members have questions, I think now's the time. Prashant?
My question is for Steve. I was curious as to what the funding sources for the U of M transit system are and how decisions are made or the governance structure for its operations.
So the funding source is mainly from the general fund. The general fund is from tuition, is really where the general fund fees come from. And so that's the biggest portion of it. And we do get a portion funded by the UM hospital because we do so much for the hospital shifts and parking management. So that's really how it's funded. The governance is really based on demand and initiatives. So some is driven by student affairs, some is driven by the hospital, some is just driven by reaction to growth and where activity is taking place on campus.
Thank you, Steve. Any other commissioner questions? Okay, seeing none, I think we can move to the next section of the presentation is Smart Cities and Intelligent Transportation Systems. And first we'll have Brad Strader from NKSK give us a little overview of the material that we're going to be covering. Brad will be followed by Luke Liu will do a traffic signal system overview. We have Tom Shuchuk, the City of Ann Arbor IT Director, presenting on INOT and Smart Cities. And then Dr. Jim Sayer will present on connected transportation environment. So if you can get us started, Brad, thank you.
So good evening. So we've spent some of the previous meetings getting you kind of an overview of transportation and a lot of the data and trends in transportation. If you've looked at the 2009 plan that was largely developed in 2007, 2008, and some of the topics tonight are all new. So transportation is really in a transformative time. Things like bike share, a lot of the things that Sarah talked about, things that Sean talked about, a lot of this is new, and what we're going to be talking about in the next few minutes is even newer and moving into the future, things to be thinking about. Again, this is all a prelude for the update of the transportation plan to get you kind of a primer on that. So we've talked a little bit about smart cities. When we surveyed you last time and previous meetings, sort of one of the goals was to look at smart cities and how's that going to affect transportation and mobility in the city, but also sort of at the last meeting that the overriding theme seemed to be Vision Zero, safety. So we're going to talk about what is this in terms of the safety implications and furthering kind of the objective you had expressed last month. So smart cities, it really should be, I guess, titled the current and future of transportation. And there's sort of three main components, and Luke's going to talk about ITS. So ITS is Intelligent Transportation Systems. And that is a lot of it we'll be talking about tonight is the signals and changes in intelligent transportation. It's a lot of technology that's in the vehicles. Signal coordination that's become more and more prevalent. The signals talking to each other, how they coordinate. Real-time adjustments based on monitoring of traffic flow and can be pedestrian, bike, other things so that the signals are adjusted. Priorities for transit, priorities for emergency vehicles, which we have around the fire stations now, so that's an emerging trend. Then connected vehicles. Connected vehicles is really how a vehicle talks to either another vehicle or to signals. And right now, a lot of the connected vehicles is vehicle to vehicle, but it could be vehicle to transit, can be vehicle to pedestrian, vehicle to bike in the future. So it's how those different mobility movers are talking to each other. And then the third part is automated vehicles. And automated is the gradual transition from an independent driver to give up more and more of the control to the vehicle. Sarah talked tonight, and Steve talked a little bit about no new mobility services, so I don't repeat that, but there are a lot of ways people get around now that they didn't get around when the last plan was done. We didn't have Uber and Lyft. We had more taxis, which is how, this group was originally formed. Well, microtransit and car share and more park and ride. Mobility is a different way, so the plan will be adjusting to what is the mobility of 2018, 2019, 2025. And safety is one of the, I think, potential benefits of these autonomous and connected vehicles and the ITS systems. There are a lot of different studies out there. The goal of this, one of the main goals and benefits of this technology is to reduce the number and severity of crashes and fatalities. Some estimates show that are on here, 25% reduction in crashes, 15% reduction in travel time for emergency vehicles. Some studies have claimed, I've seen as high as 80% of reduction in crashes when all these things are in place. And part of that is we had a trend for years of crashes and fatalities going down in the last few years because of largely distracted driving. It's gone up, even with all this emerging technology. So the idea of autonomous and connected vehicles is to sort of offset that trend of people being distracted as they're driving. So there's sort of I borrowed this slide from somebody else, but this is sort of the hierarchy of the transition, this gradual transition to automated vehicles. So we went from no driving automation to sort of this driver assistance or partial driving assistance. So that might be when you're getting extra braking. Some of you might have, a parallel parking ability within your vehicle, backup cameras, and gradually things are being added to more and more of the vehicles. And so these are the different levels, and it'll continue till you get to the full driving automation. When will that happen? We'll hear from some of the experts tonight. There's a lot of debate on when this will happen, but it's certainly a new topic that wasn't really on the horizon even just 10 years ago with the last plan. So what does all this mean to you as a Transportation Commission? There's still a lot of unknown. It's something to be aware of. These are just a few things I think that we had put together. Efficiency. And there's a balance. We don't know which way these are going to go, but real-time travel data and adjusting signals and maybe pedestrian bike signals and so forth, the systems can adapt more quickly, so we potentially could have more efficient system, more capacity in the system. That might mean we can narrow lanes or convert lanes, so more capacity for the travel lane means we can do some things with bike lanes and pedestrian that maybe we can't now with the traffic, so that's a benefit. The safety benefits I already talked about, I think can be pretty substantial. Transit, you've heard from Steve and Sarah tonight about these better first and last mile connections, so that's a way technology can help people plan their trip and their transit trip or their way. But also it might reduce transit use. There's Ben mentioned when the RTA did their master plan, there was some of the opposition said, well, with these emerging technologies, we don't need fixed route transit anymore, and there's an opposition. So there's some debate about that. Congestion emission, we heard that from Sean tonight. So potentially congestion and emissions would go down, but also it might be if these autonomous vehicles are always circulating, there could be more emissions or there could be more congestion. We don't know. It could be either one, so it makes it a little bit difficult to plan for the future. There's some concern about equity, that how equitable would the system be. You've already heard that a little bit with Uber and Lyft, and it's more for the more affluent. So that's something that will have to be considered and important to Ann Arbor's, I think, policy. Land use. A lot of the thinking is this systems will allow more density, more walking and biking and all the things that kind of fit into your philosophy, but it's also possible that if people aren't driving, they'll sit in their vehicle, they'll be working in their vehicle, and they could live farther away and still commute to Ann Arbor. So either one, we don't know yet. Parking demand. Likely the demand for parking, which is something that was Steve talked about and so forth, and cities and hospitals are wrestling with this. Do we build new parking structures now, or do we make them adaptable to other uses? Because maybe there'll be a lot less parking demand because there might be fewer vehicles or they'll be circulating rather than parking. So I think the lesson is the city needs to stay on top of the technology, be aware of it, and have a plan that is adaptive and not put everything into one system. And these are some of the things we're thinking, preparing for technology changes. It's important that the public understand this and not get too far afield with it, but acknowledge that these changes are happening. Look at how is this going to affect the policy in the transportation plan. How do we stay on technology? And then continuing to monitor state and federal programs. You're lucky here, this is sort of the test bed, one of the test beds in the country for this autonomous and connected vehicles. So you're fortunate to have resources like you do tonight informing you about that. And then Luke will talk a little bit about the infrastructure. How do you set up the infrastructure now so that it's adaptive as these systems come on board? So that's kind of an overview, and I'm going to turn it over to Luke, who's going to talk about the traffic signal systems here in the city today.
Good evening. My name is Luke Liu. I'm one of two traffic engineers on the city staff. My peer is Cynthia Redinger. I typically attend the meetings like this, and when it comes to traffic signal operations, I'm the one doing a lot of the evaluation and the recommendations. So in order to let everyone delve a little bit deeper into the traffic signal system, a little bit more than you typically see on the road of just the signal head display, I organized this presentation or this overview into 3 parts. The first one is really just to scratch the surface. That's the components road users would typically feel, see, and use and interact with. The second piece is the support items of the infrastructure. And really the last and most important piece is the integration and operations of everything. That completes the full circle of this service logic. So across the board in the city boundary, we have a total of 162 signalized intersections. 38 of those are state trunk line intersections along North Main Street, Jackson Avenue, Huron Street, and Washtenaw Avenue. There are 2 traffic signals on the campus of U of M, and both of them are along East Medical Center Drive, one at Cancer Center, the other one at East Hospital. We also operate 1 traffic signal for Washtenaw County Road Commission, and that location is Oak Valley and South Church. Because we have 1 signal on both ends of the South Church Bridge over I-94, it makes sense to take care of the cross-boundary operations. For user interface, so besides traffic signal heads, there are detection and actuation. Detection is primarily the passive device, a passive action for the system to detect a user demand or a demand for service. And actuation is more of a more proactive action that a user would give to the system to inform there is a demand pending to be serviced. Examples for both push buttons is obviously an actuation device. And there are other sensors that we have on our infrastructure to detect the demands. There are in-pavement sensors. There are the traditional loop sensors. If you pay attention in the past, that's the legacy style sensors to detect the presence of vehicles. Nowadays, with the advancement of technology, the newer kind of sensors use the magnetic field measurement to sense the mass of a vehicle passing by. And even more recently, we start to use over-the-road sensors of radar, ultrasonic, or video-based detection technology. So it's not really intrusive to the roadway structure, and it also has some other benefits, such as it allows detection zones to be changed by simply changing software settings rather than actually moving the hardware of the sensor location. And even by coordination and collaboration with the university, there are new and emerging technology that is becoming available to allow for even more advanced type of sensors or notification of road user demand to the system. such as vehicle to pedestrian, vehicle to infrastructure communication. Now we move on to talk a little bit more about what really ties everything together. On the intersection level, we have traffic signal controller that's in the background. And really, when I came to the city 2 years ago, I'm amazed by the communication infrastructure that's available to support everything. We have central servers here and also at Wheeler to support the operations. Then there's also extensive fiber communication network supported from the IT department to support the operations of signals. So right now, almost 100%, almost all signals, except 4 locations, are connected to our central server. And these communication link also allows for future monitoring sites and also allows for collaboration with the university to facilitate their research needs. So we share a lot of data between the city and other entities. So that includes the Michigan Department of Transportation, it includes U of M, it includes the county, and also the RIDE. That's, we're really looking to establish more sharing between different entities to facilitate more applications. So the most important piece of the presentation is about system operations. We have different timing plans to service the needs for recurring congestion, that's the peak hour commute needs. Then there's also the non-recurring events that include football games in town or other games nowadays. And if there's crash happened either in the city network or even on freeways along or outside the city, they could have some ripple effect to the traffic demands on our network. Construction, as everyone can feel during this moment, that's a special event that requires significant staff time to coordinate and monitor and keep making adjustment. For emergency response, currently we have fire engine preemption along station number 1 at 3 intersections around the City Hall. For pedestrian, bike, non-motorized services, so far we have pedestrian signals, we have countdown signals, then we have, for operations, we program at some locations a leading pedestrian interval, meaning to service pedestrian a few seconds before releasing motor vehicles. And the idea is to give drivers a better view of non-motorized road users in the crosswalk with a goal of improving safety. When we talk about applications, the central database allowed for many of these things to happen. For adaptive traffic signal system, we have been a user of the Scoot system for over a decade. And for Scoot system, it's been used at many major cities across the whole globe. And in the US, especially in this Midwest region, we have been a leader user of this technology, and we have been designated as the Center of Excellence for Scoot technology for almost 2 years now. And we showcase the technology to other agencies that's looking into this application. And through emerging technology, we really look forward to better service all modes of traffic needs on our network. And many of these are being enabled by research at U of M Transportation Research Institute. So we're really glad to be able to provide the infrastructure to support the research need, and it does bring back benefit to our daily operations. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name's Tom Suchek. I'm the IT director for the city of Ann Arbor. I want to talk a little bit about a project that we're working on with our vehicles in the city. Today, we have about 81 vehicles that have AVL technology in them, and we are going to be putting that technology in about 110 more of the vehicles. And it's going to span not only public works, but other areas of the city. Advantages, obviously, are reduced fuel costs. Having GPS in the vehicles allow us to get to places quicker and more efficiently, increase response times, and obviously driving habits and safety, and being able to monitor where people are at, answering constituent questions about the location of a vehicle is very, very helpful, especially for our staff internally. The GPS software that's in the vehicles, we are going to be putting some new technology in, so when anybody in the field spots a problem in the city, any city employee spots a problem in the city, they're going to be able to press a button, and it's going to be able to populate a request into our CityWorks maintenance management system automatically. So in the past, what they had to do is they would have to call, and somebody would have to manually put something in, or they have to wait to get back in the office and go put it into the system. So we're going to continue to use the technology in the vehicles to improve operations, and improve our software, make things more efficient, more cost-effective for our employees. The next item is our new fiber network. Our new fiber network is being constructed right now, and it's scheduled to be done at the end of August. We affectionately call it the A2 iNet, which is iNet is short for an institutional network. We also call it a community network. And the reason for this is really our current network is owned by Comcast. It's going away, and we chose to put this new network in really as number one is we're going to own it, so we don't have to rely on somebody else for our connectivity throughout the city, and it's really for the future. And if you imagine the city limits and a network traversing around the city limits and then having a bisector go down straight through the middle of the city, we will have fiber capacity all around the city to be able to connect lateral locations on. All the city locations will be connected to it, and then we also have some partners that will be connected to it as well. There's going to be a lot of excess capacity built into this, and what this really does is a lot of projects never get off the ground because we don't have the resources to be able to get from point A to point B. And this network was designed strategically to be able to get to anywhere in the city relatively easily, and there's excess capacity built in to be able to do that. So before it was discussed about all this cool technology, but if you don't have the foundation and the infrastructure, you can't really use the cool technology, and it's been a huge barrier in the past. And what we're trying to do is eliminate that. So when we have new initiatives that pop up, this will no longer be an issue or a problem that will stop a project. We'll be able to connect, hopefully fairly easily, to anybody. Now, the way it was designed and the topology that I talked about, it's really a ring and a bisector. We built resiliency and failover into it. So if the main ring gets cut, it will fail over to the other side. Now, this is for the city locations and for the city's network. But it's very, very important that if the network degrades or if it gets cut, if there's no single point of failure, the cable really needs to get cut in two places for the network to go down. So it's very, very important to keep everything up, especially in an emergency, to keep the network up and running when possible. The other thing we're doing is we are proactively working with Public Works to make sure that we put conduit in the ground and put infrastructure in the ground for future use. So in the case of the ride, there's a park and ride over on Miller Road, and we have put some infrastructure in to get close on the other side of M14. We've put some infrastructure in, and we'll be putting more infrastructure in to be able to get to that park and ride in the future. May not ever happen. I think it probably will, but we're doing things proactively to continue, not only to build the initial network, but to build future infrastructure in place to be able to get to places so, so our partners can use them and the city can use them. I mentioned the RIDE is one of our partners that will be using this network, the libraries and the DDA. And the other thing about it is we have some software, and we are mapping everything down to the circuit level. So all the assets of the network will be documented, and we will know how everything is connected, and we will continue to record the assets and know the truth about the system at all times. So it's extremely important as we embark on this that we keep track of it for operational reasons in the future. So as far as, smart city technology, smart city initiatives and IoT strategies, it's really, really important that we continue to enhance and maintain a really, really strong infrastructure. When we have a department, we work very, very closely with all the departments in the city. We work very closely with traffic control. And we just want to make sure that when they come to us is that we have we can provide them a solution to get them what they want. It's extremely important. So proactive communications is another thing. We can't communicate enough. We have meetings with departments to try to get out ahead of things, to proactively try to know what's going on so we can plan for these things. And again, it's just extremely important to be able to communicate with our partners. We're going to be partnering with the community. Again, this is an institutional network, but we also call it a community network. So we want to make sure that we work with other entities within the city to be able to use this. We want to be able to dig once. We don't want to be able to go back. We want to build it once. We want to build it right the first time. We want to do a quality job, and we don't want to have to go back and do rework. Security. Being an IT guy, this is the things that keep me up at night. Security is extremely important, and I read an article the other day that from Smart City Initiatives, security is one of the main reasons why projects don't happen. And actually, security is probably my biggest pet peeve. There are millions and millions of endpoints and devices that are out there, and a lot of people are compromising, a lot of hackers are compromising that these days. And we have to be very, very sensitive to what we're putting in, and we have to plan and design things so they're secure. And I know a lot of the major vendors that are in the IoT space and the smart city space are really, really working on security, because that's really preventing them and their customers from moving forward. Sorry, I have to put my glasses on. Designing and implement solutions. We want to make sure that, number one, that we're meeting our customers' requirements and their needs. We want to make sure that the solutions that we're putting in are sustainable, and we want to make sure that it's built for the future. And built for the future is really one of the goals in the IT department that we have, is to make sure that we're just not putting in stuff in for the sake of putting stuff in. We really want to make sure it lasts, and lasts a long time. And the other thing that we're doing is, with the advent of this foundation, we're collecting a ton of data. And data can tell us a lot. It can help us run our business more efficiently. And we're putting a business intelligence platform we're in the process of putting a business intelligence platform in. So when we put these devices out, when we build this network, we're going to collect this data, and we're going to report that data back to our businesses so they can make good business decisions. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Jim Sayre. I dropped the doctor title. I am the director of the university's Transportation Research Institute, and I have been fortunate enough to be working with the city on connected vehicle technology since 2011. It was 2011 we entered into a memorandum of understanding with the city to deploy connected vehicle technology in preparation for, we wrote a proposal to the U.S. Department of Transportation. $32 million was spent on the first award. $15 million was spent on the second award. A lot of that money was spent in this community. I think in the long run, it was very beneficial for the community at large. The second program, the first one was called Safety Pilot Model Deployment, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the follow-on work. Anybody want to venture to guess what's the most connected community in the world? It's Ann Arbor. The connected vehicle technology that is deployed in Ann Arbor and has been for the better part of the last 5 years is more sophisticated than anywhere else in the world. It is a broader deployment, both in terms of the infrastructure, but also the number of vehicles that are interacting with that infrastructure. So we have cities, in fact, part of our current contract with the U.S. Department of Transportation requires that we consult with other cities around the United States that are seeking to deploy this technology. So we, on a quarterly basis, meet with these other locations, New York City, Tampa, state of Wyoming, along a stretch of interstate, and most recently our friends down in Columbus. We meet with them, a lot of lessons learned that we share, and help them to get up to speed in doing some deployment. Having said all that, we intend to keep Ann Arbor to be the most sophisticated environment, at least in the nation, if not the world. And so I'll talk a little bit about what we're planning for this year and next year in terms of how we're going to actually achieve that. So the original program, Safety Pilot Model Deployment, we really concentrated on Northeast Ann Arbor. And the reason is that, one, as was just mentioned, we had the fiber optic network we could use in many of these locations. But also, we wanted to concentrate both a number of vehicles, where we had 2,800 vehicles equipped with connected technology, in an area that had the infrastructure technology, because we wanted to find out about the interaction of the vehicles with the infrastructure, but also the vehicle-to-vehicle interaction. So two vehicles traveling in the same direction, cross path, opposite direction. We wanted to understand all the different types of scenarios where you might be able to prevent a crash that is using the connected technology. So if you drive around, at least Northeast Ann Arbor, you will see hanging from the intersection, usually on the corner where the traffic control box is, an antenna that looks like this one. Just a small white box. This one's showing the antennas pointing down. Most of ours are pointing up. But nevertheless, so we have about 25 sites currently that we have these radios at. And these are tied into the city's fiber optic network. And we're collecting data, and we are using that data. A lot of researchers at the university are using that data, and the U.S. Department of Transportation is using that data to assess the effectiveness of this technology. So, we've been working, again, contiguously for the last 5 years, but we are investing more. And I want to emphasize we. We work very closely, obviously, with the city. It's the city's infrastructure, but the university, through a variety of funding sources, are actually the ones that are paying for all of this equipment. as well as we pay for the installation. So we cover the hours for staff to do the installation and the maintenance of this equipment. By the end of this calendar year, I expect we will have 70 locations, up from 25. So working again with the city, we've planned where are all key locations where there is fiber, and that could utilize better traffic control. We have 3 locations where there are curves where we can warn drivers that they're going too fast for an upcoming curve. Good example is the one on Plymouth Road by Wendy's. There was fatality there about 4 years ago. We're also this year going to be equipping pedestrian crosswalks. So these are crosswalks at mid-block. Several of them are on Plymouth Road. And what we're going to be doing, using a variety of different technologies, is broadcasting out wireless signals to the vehicles when either the pedestrian pushes the button or a sensor at the crosswalk detects a pedestrian in the crosswalk. So vehicles that are approaching that have the appropriate equipment, those drivers can be warned inside the vehicle that there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. Whether they can see them or not, you might have a large van or a truck in front of you, they will receive the information that there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. We do have 8 freeway sites where we're monitoring traffic. We'll have 8 freeway sites. Right now we only have 3, but we'll be monitoring traffic on all the highways, basically the beltway that surrounds the entire community. We have some staging and testing sites that allows us to try out things and upgrades to software, et cetera. But really the focus is on 49 intersections on major thoroughfares throughout town. We had 2,800 vehicles out there that were equipped with the technology at our peak. Those devices were built 5 years ago. They were the first of their kind. They were all prototypes. A lot has changed in terms of the standards for this technology in the last 5 years. So we're in the process of purchasing all new radios. And by early 2018, we will have outfitted 2,500 vehicles, including a lot of city vehicles are equipped. We are going to be doing a variety of different, deploying a variety of different types of applications. So when I say an application, what kinds of information are you sharing with either the vehicle operator, or are you sharing with the infrastructure, or are you sharing with the pedestrians in order to make transportation more efficient and by reducing congestion, reducing emissions, but also improving safety. We're also doing, which doesn't get a lot of press, we're doing a project, a $3 million project with the Department of Energy, where we are actually putting data collection in a variety of different vehicles. The focus, though, is on hybrid and all-electric vehicles, and collecting data just about how people actually drive these vehicles and how this connected infrastructure could actually improve energy savings in these vehicles by informing the driver that, the light's about to turn red, so you might as well slow down now. Just take your foot off the throttle and coast, because you're not going to make that light. Or transit signal prioritization, where you can extend the green phase for a few seconds if you've got a bus that's coming through and because you're trying to encourage people to use mass transit. So as has been mentioned by a variety of folks today, Ann Arbor has a wide variety of road users. It's not just cars and trucks. We have motorcycles, we have bicyclists, we have pedestrians. And so we're actually trying to deploy a number of technologies that address the safety primarily for all these different road users. We have deployed connected motorcycles, done that for the last 4 years. We had one connected bicycle. And most recently, we're going to be deploying a project on connected pedestrians. We've been doing work for a number of years on this. It's had some technical challenges, but what we're doing is working with a number of different contract organizations, repurposing the Wi-Fi chip in a smartphone to broadcast the dedicated short-range communication signal. And so we do geofencing so that as the pedestrian with the equipped phone approaches a pedestrian crosswalk, it automatically switches off of the Wi-Fi and to the dedicated short-range communication. And as that can trigger then the signal, or at least broadcast to nearby vehicles that there's a pedestrian present. So we're doing quite a bit of work in that area with a number of our partners. So this fall, once students get back in town, we have 30 smartphones ready that have had firmware, software upgrades to it. We're going to be recruiting students that live on the north side of Plymouth Road in apartment complexes that cross the street on a regular basis to attend school on North Campus. And we're trying to get them to replace their own phones with the phone that we give them. These are pretty decent phones to begin with. And then we're going to have 100 vehicles that regularly operate up and down that Plymouth Road segment that'll be equipped with the specific warning devices to detect those pedestrians. Mentioned 4 sites, three different technologies. I won't go into that. I'm not going to bother playing the video in the interest of time, but if you're interested in better understanding of how this technology works with pedestrians, I encourage you to click on the link and go look at that. Honda, Qualcomm, Denso, a number of other companies are actually involved. LG Electronics is our handset provider. Verizon is our carrier. So this really is very much an integrated program in order to actually pull it off. So overall, our plans are expand, invest in connected technology in the city of Ann Arbor, maintain our leadership role, despite what those people to the south of us think they're going to do. I'm convinced they're not going to have a better connected vehicle environment than we do. It's important. It brings money to this community, not just the research money, but companies like Navia, who announced that they're going to build their manufacturing facility in Saline the other day for automated vehicles. They're doing that because that connected technology is the groundwork that has to be present in order to do true automation. If you don't have this connectivity, you're only going to address a percentage of the crashes, and you cannot manage the traffic. And so, in that respect, the city of Ann Arbor is well ahead of anybody else in the world. That's what's attracting companies like Ford and Honda and GM, who, unbeknownst to you, are testing their vehicles in the city on a very regular basis, because they're coming in to experience the real world connected environment, real cars, real traffic signals, and they're testing their technologies and their applications. One last thing about bicyclists, as I've not forgotten bicyclists. It's a little bit more of a challenge, but ultimately we believe that the smartphone application is what's going to work best for bicyclists, rather than trying to install a radio on their bike. So same idea as the pedestrian. It's just a little more challenging because of the proximity to the vehicles, and bikes move a lot faster. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have time now for questions. If any commission members have questions for any of the 4 presenters that we've just heard from.
I have a quick question for Luke, specifically regarding the pedestrian signal offset. How many intersections is this offset present at? And is there any studies or data about the efficacy of it and/or plans to expand that signal timing offset to other crosswalks around the city in order to improve pedestrian safety?
I think you mean the leading pedestrian interval.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
So how it works is really by taking a few seconds away from the face being allowed to that movement. So right now, most of the locations we have this feature is around the downtown area, where we have many or very high use of the crosswalks. So in the past, this has been more reactive as to if there's any concern, either near misses or statistics are showing there's less desirable interactions of pedestrians to motor vehicles, then we would implement this. And this is a relatively easy setting in the controller we can change.
I have a question also. Of the 160-some intersections that have detectors and that kind of thing, is there any intersection in all of Ann Arbor that detects bicycles?
Not specifically. What I really mean is the current detection technology, based on either loop sensors or magnetic sensors, if the mass of the bicycle itself is large enough, and if the location is right, there's a chance it will get detected. And even for the current status of the technology, state of the art, it does not provide reliable detection. There are settings we can tune, we can adjust. Even with the most legacy style loop sensors, we can tune up the sensitivity level to detect bicycles. Then that would typically, lead to other issues. So really, I think what we're talking about here is the service. The question on hand is really how to service bicycle needs. So that's just my understanding of providing the service is more direct as to the consideration of installing certain types of sensors. Meaning, like in detail, when we program signal controllers for operations, if there is nothing really reliable to install and detect, we can just make a recall of servicing certain movements, regardless whether there is a demand or not. So that's just one approach for the near term that can be done quickly to fix any immediate needs. And for the long term, we can, of course, and we're planning to testing the offerings on the market so that we can really make an informed decision as to what type of technology we're going to use and where we're going to use them.
Okay. Do you have a comment on the question of who should get priority, the cars being efficient or the bicycles being efficient, or is there a chance that you would look at like a corridor like Washington Street or William Street and say, let's set this up for bicycle speeds and the other ones are set up for cars, or is that even being talked about much, or?
More in my head. What I really mean is for programming timing plans, if we just scratch the surface, we can say the offsets are programmed for progression of either motor vehicles or bicycles. And really, when I sit down and do the homework, it's the programming of the system is more than that. It's not certain point of the green we're trying to coordinate. There's the beginning of the green, there's the end of a green. It's a window we're working with. So there's really not a specific way of saying we're programming to prefer any specific mode of traffic. It's more of how we can accommodate both. And for different kinds of needs, the objective can be or should be different. A good case of example is when traffic is very heavy, there is no progression of any kind during that condition. What's more important becomes of how to more efficiently use the space we have on our network to store the queue. And at the end of the green, how to clear the queue between each block so side street traffic can be serviced. So I think there's more than that. It's really for each individual location and each individual time periods, we can come up with different strategy to best utilize our system.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions for Luke or any of the other presenters?
I do have to say, wow, in general, for the presentations we've heard.
I think that wraps up our that section of the agenda. So thank you all to all of the presenters. I would second what Linda Diane said.
Wow.
That was a lot of great information. Thank you for all taking your time to present to the commission. So next was staff report and updates. As we mentioned, you were provided that in your agenda packet. So I think we are actually a little ahead of schedule. If you did have a question that you wanted to raise now, could do that, but also submitting those by email is preferable so they can be directed to the right staff person.
Great. Let's move on to liaison reports then, if anyone who is representing somebody has something to say.
Yes.
Yeah, Scott.
So a couple weeks ago, the City Council and Planning Commission had a joint work session to receive a report on the Allen Creek Greenway project, which I think would be of interest to this group. And the staff and the consultants did a great job presenting the work they've done so far, outlined the city's preferred route, some rough cost projections, and sort of laid out what the next steps are. So they're working on negotiating with the railroad to get railroad right of way. The Conservancy, Allen Creek Greenway Conservancy is getting up and running with their branding plan, and the group working on this will be starting to work on actually drafting the master plan and figuring out the timing for approval from Planning Commission and Council. It sounds like construction will be somewhat opportunistic as funding and opportunity arises. It's not a start it and finish it kind of a plan, but there's a ton of information on the city's website, and I encourage anybody who's curious in tracking this, if you're not already, to take a look at that presentation there. You can find the presentation from the work session on Legistar for that meeting. I couldn't find it on the Greenway site. So that's my major update. I also had the opportunity, just as one of the items mentioned in our transportation update, to go to a community meeting presenting the plan so far for the North Fifth Avenue reconstruction, which is Fifth Avenue and Detroit Street between Catherine and Kingsley. And it's a really complicated area, and there's been a lot of really great work done in really thinking that through. And the most recent presentation is on that website, the North Fifth Avenue reconstruction site, and I encourage anybody interested to take a look at that. as well. And I was pretty impressed. So a lot to figure out, and it's looking really good. I'm excited to see work begin, which I think is construction's supposed to begin on phases of that project next year.
Oh, yeah. I'm Tim Hull. I represent on the Disability Commission. And yeah, I know also this is just in general. I know I had mentioned some projects including the Nixon Green Duvarin. And one thing that came up with that is that the detours, I heard them like at the public meeting on May 31st, they're totally closed the intersection. It's already underway. And the bus detours didn't actually get out until a few days before they went into effect. And the thing there is that that essentially is a temporary service change because because a route goes through that intersection and they can't do that, obviously, so they have to split it. And there are some issues involved with that. And I'm also wondering how, like, as far as like detours and things, how they get communicated and how that works, because I know there are a lot of agencies involved, and yeah, I know that right now the situation as is, it can create some challenges for people who use transit, and also I'm wondering a way to keep tabs on the future projects like the crosswalks and stuff. I mean, that's all I had to say.
Great, so the new process is it possible to put those things in writing as questions, and we can follow up with
Yeah,
that?
I'm just wondering how this is dealt with and if it
Yeah.
could be done better, just to make sure that like AATA is aware early with respect to like detours, particularly when they're big ones. And
You can also ask Sarah after the meeting if you want,
Yeah.
that she could let you know.
yeah, I've already been in touch with a lot of people about this particular one. I mean, I think that's all resolved. I'm more interested in the general process.
Okay. Thanks. Any other liaisons? Yes.
I just want to update the commission on a fairly important development regarding the governance of the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. At our most recent meeting, the board voted to go to a policy governance model for governing the transit agency. And that might sound a little boring, but to me, it's kind of an exciting new chapter in the way we conduct business. And basically, in a nutshell, this involves the board setting ends policies. So basically, these are long-term strategic goals that we want the agency to achieve for the community. And along with these ends, there's a set of monitoring policies as well as some limitations that the CEO and the organization are subject to. But in general, what this does is it helps the board keep our sort of our vision intact, where we kind of monitor the agency's performance against the vision and the ends. And the CEO and staff have a lot more flexibility in day-to-day operations, so that the board doesn't kind of meddle in day-to-day operations, but there's continual monitoring to make sure that the ends are being achieved by the agency. So we'll have to see how this plays out, sort of in a more day-to-day and month-to-month setting. But I'm personally excited about it, and I think it'll give us a good direction for making our transit service better and more efficient over time.
Great. I've worked with policy governance on 2 different boards for over 12 years, and it's great. Any other liaison reports? All right, then we have communications from other commissioners. You have mine in writing. Anything else? So do look at the SurveyMonkey link that I have there. It's available to the public as well. And I'd like to use that to figure out a little bit more of how to fine tune things to make us run more efficiently, and also make sure that you're getting your needs met, although it's not the only way to communicate. Then that's it, except for the next agenda items. And we are going to propose a couple of committees to be established at the next meeting, and so that's an agenda item that we'll be putting on there. You can communicate with me if you have any comments on that. Any other agenda items that anybody wants to bring forward? Okay, that'll make it easier. But we'll have a very full agenda again, with various commission members missing. I understand this is probably not live.
It is live.
It is live, okay. But if you're missing a meeting, you can always watch it afterwards.
Yep, our meetings are broadcast live through CTN. There was actually a situation with the network currently that it's through YouTube, I guess. So they said there was something different for today, but I think that will be resolved in the future. It's through
Fiber.
the CTNs. Yeah,
Yes.
something with the fiber network. Maybe Tom can tell us more. But anyways, the meetings are available, the recordings are available afterwards as well. Just as far as next meeting goes, we will be talking about the capital improvements program, and that will be the opportunity for commission member input on that. And so I think that is an important meeting. I hope you all can be a part of the discussion there.
So unless there's any objections?
Could you give the date of the next meeting? That would be helpful.
I think it's July 19th. Let me check my calendar.
Okay.
Yes. Yep, July 19th, 7 p.m.
Great. If there are no objections, then I'll call this meeting adjourned. All right. Thank you.